Excellent.
Okay.
You want to go ahead?
I'm trying. There we go.
Okay, great. Excellent. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this session with time at the end for questions, definitely. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We've got the vendor channel, which is VE-Zoomin, where we'd love to hear your thoughts. And of course, on the other Slack channels as well. You can also contact us directly. These are our emails below. We'd be very happy to hear your thoughts. And of course, there'll be time at the end for questions if you are interested in asking us directly on this session, anything that you want to clarify going forward. Okay.
So what I'm going to do today is kind of briefly show you both our legacy help system, so the current help behavior that we have, and then the new in-app help experience. After that, I'll kind of dig into some of the details and talk about the decisions that drove these different changes. I'll also talk about how to implement the in-app help and talk about where we are in that process. And then I'll show you a live demo of the in-app help in a McAfee product.
Excellent.
So here is the legacy help. So you use the help command to open a local content. We had this context-sensitive links in there. And of course, it opened in that kind of that floating window. So that's the help experience from before.
Right, and that online help, that was so the app was in a web browser, but the help was a local help that showed up, or were both local and on your computer? How did that work?
Actually, it looks like a web app, but it's actually an on-premise application.
Right.
And so they were both, both local,
Right.
basically.
Right. Right. So this was a local Windows application and a local context-sensitive help window that showed up right alongside the application itself, and it would show help about what you were looking at in your on-prem application, right?
Right. Correct.
Exactly. So
Okay.
good old-fashioned help, right?
Exactly. Exactly. No big surprises there. So, the legacy help system is Lawrence kind of summarized there. It had a lot of good things going for it. This is actually a custom plug-and-play system that we created. It uses the DITA files, but it only shows the content for the products that you have installed. So this product is like a platform that you can add plugins to. So as you installed plugins, you would install the help content for that plugin at the same time. So you only got what you had, available. And of course, we had that context-sensitive link, so you got that something, when you clicked help, you got something that was related to where you were at in the product. And then, you have the floating window, so we have a nice, its ability to keep the user on task because they don't have to leave their context to get help. There were some major drawbacks with this setup, and it really minimized the usefulness of it. The first being that we could only update the content at release time because it went with the build, right? It was local, so you had one chance to provide the content. Because we delivered, we sim-ship languages, we had to prepare the content really, really early. And that lead time became so large that the writers started only providing the context-sensitive help topics in the help file. So the full content set would get delivered in a PDF file that was outside the kind of the product experience. And then the CS links themselves had to be updated every release. You always, you know, the writers really had to nag engineering every release. Anytime there was a new page, they had to drive all that change. And so there was a lot of overhead in just keeping those links up to date.
Right, right. So basically you had extremely static help. It was the same help for everyone. You had to write it way ahead of time so that it would be ready in time for the release of your on-prem.
Mm-hmm.
It was static completely, so everybody got exactly the same help. And that lead time became so long that in the end you had to narrow down the help offering that you were giving in this online help window. And it was much less than perhaps you would have liked it to be, and you had to provide the rest as PDF, which I think is the classic case of how help used to be before the advent of having help online in SaaS and separating out the delivery of the product, which had to go through a lot of QA and then gold masters and so on, with online help, which you could update regularly, I suppose, and continuously, regardless of when the product was released, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
So let's go through kind of what the current help experience is today. And really it's those downsides of this legacy help system that we talk about that kind of led us towards this, how we have it set up today. So we, you know, same help menu, but it opens hosted content. But those individual CS links now all lead to this page, to the home page of our site. And I'll talk about, you know, we'll talk about why we did that in a little bit. But because the help links are opening in this separate browser window, you know, the user has to switch back and forth between the product and the help content.
Right. So now everybody is going to the home page. You could have had CSH links, but you didn't. You brought everybody to the central page. We'll talk about why in a minute. And now the help is online. And of course, once it's online and it's hosted, it means that you've decoupled the release of the product with the updating of the help. Now you can update the help anytime you like, right?
Correct, correct.
Okay.
So that, you know, is, you know, the main advantage to this system is we were able to, now we were decoupled, right? We can update when we need to. That overhead of updating the links is gone, right? Because it's what we called the one and done. We pointed all those links to docs.mcafee.com and then, you know, you're done. That's all you had to do. So of course you might come up with some of these downsides yourself. I mean, the user has to leave the product to find the content. They have to do that sort of on their own. And then we found that users weren't filtering the content. And so essentially what was happening is they were having to search through everything on the site. And we'll talk about that trend and you know, filtering content also a little bit later.
Right. Right. So as we'll see a little bit later on, we'll have some wider industry trends also looking here. But basically, you move to an online help system. This is driven by the Zoomin engine. It's a fully branded site. It's online. It allows you to dynamically publish anytime that you need. Mm-hmm. McAfee has a substantial library of content. But of course, now, without the context-sensitive help, it means that people search. And they need to rely on that search. So at the beginning, while you thought that the search would be great because the search was great for you guys because you were filtering for the product, mm-hmm. you found, for some strange reason, that users weren't filtering, weren't using those filters. And so they were getting mixed results, right?
Correct.
And there was all that context switching. right?
Yes, yes, for sure. So now let's go to good part and talk about the new in-app help. So here we have a help icon that opens hosted help, hosted content. And we're bringing that context sensitivity back, so you can see the page name is Getting Started with Web Policy, and the topic has that same title. And we've got that floating window again. So very similar to the legacy help, but it has the hosted content.
Right. So it's like going back to basics.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got context sensitivity. We've got the help coming in there. This isn't a separate window. This is a panel within the same website. So there's no context switching. Mm-hmm. And it's a floating window and it's context sensitive, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So like Lawrence said, this is the best of both. We can update whenever we want. The script is very similar to the one and done links we have today, right? You add the script into your page, and you don't have to keep updating it. So I'm calling that the one and done script. And we'll get into the script in more detail later too, and what it looks like and so forth. And the other thing that's similar, again, to the legacy help is that you can constrain what shows up in that help window, so that when a user is searching, they're only searching for the content on that product. And I think that's one of the biggest actual improvements to the user experience will be that constrained, the search constraint, so that people are only getting results that are relevant to them.
Right, right. So let's go back a little bit to the beginning of this story, when you moved to an online portal, right? So you moved to an online portal and you made the curious decision to remove all your context-sensitive help links and have everybody go to the homepage. So you had context sensitivity and then you removed it. So obviously, I and lots of other people are probably wondering, why would you do,
what the hell?
That?
Exactly. Well, I'm so glad you asked that, because we had a lot of people also ask that same question, and it was really it was based on data, and sometimes we actually showed this chart to a lot of internal people, and it was titled "Why No Help." But so you can see here that these are the top 3 methods that our users were using when they were looking for the product content. And most people are using Google, far and away the most popular. Some were going to the support site, but we see just a few are going to help. And so when we looked at this data and we said, well, it's very low usage. We have sort of this low content value, and we have this high maintenance. And we're like, it didn't really make it. It didn't make the cut. We were like, we don't want to invest time in help today. We're gonna put that on hold and come back to it.
And of course, that high maintenance is because you need to ask developers to put in the precise ID that would link to that precise topic. So it had a high maintenance, not just for the authors, but also it exacted a price on your developers. And of course, developers are high and mighty. We don't want to bother them too much. and so that's always an issue, and it creates a lot of friction. So I can understand why you would remove that and why you did it, and you had the data to back it up. But then, of course, people were going to your homepage and they were doing a search. And then you were finding that you thought, okay, people will search. And when you did a search, you filtered and that was fine. But then you found that your users were not filtering.
Correct. Yeah, and it was just really bad experience. The search results they weren't getting relevant search results because the scope just wasn't narrowed enough. And, we looked into this because we hadn't quite grokked that they weren't filtering. And so we did some user studies and found that like no one selected the search filters.
Yeah.
And we actually made a change in the UI to make the filter more prominent. That didn't help at all. Like people, they're not doing it.
Right.
And
We had a number of customers do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, you know, Lawrence, you know, you've noticed this trend as well.
Exactly. So we found customers who used to filter. This used to be the old way or the legacy way, the way that people perhaps were talking a couple of years ago about personalization. 5 years ago, everybody was saying, well, you've got filters. Filters will allow you to personalize. Filters will allow you to automatically perhaps change permissions and so on. And we have seen with our analytics across the board, some astonishing numbers. And as you can see here, this was taken from our analytics dashboard, that 98%, more than 98% of people do not use search filters. So of course, at the beginning, we were horrified. And then of course, we thought, of course, right? Because when I go to Google, how many people know are even aware that Google has filters? There are a few power users who might go into the tools menu and then check the different types of images or check the different types of content, but most people do not expect search to be working with filters. So of course, filtering was perhaps a very crude method. And of course, we started talking about personalization long before most other people were doing that. And we are now working with search personalization in a very different way. So that search shouldn't require anybody to be filtering. Search should automatically be promoting the content that's most interesting for you. So this is something about the industry as a whole, not just the customers of McAfee, but across the board. We've been finding that search filters were an idea that perhaps has had its day, has moved on, because people are just expecting a Google experience.
And you know, what I've seen in the user studies we've done is people really, they expect you to know what they want and to give it to them. That's really kind of our expectation. So let's go into the kind of into the implementation side now. So one of our biggest concerns when we were kind of picking it, you know, we knew we wanted to do help this year, and when we were, you know, figuring out, well, what product, what how are we going to deliver it? The biggest concerns we had was really, as Lawrence mentioned earlier, is minimizing our impact to engineering. It just essentially it has to be easy to implement. And the picture here is that the script, the embed code for the help window. You add that into the page header, and then that redirects your calls into that window. And there's some more technical people on this call that might want to add a couple more details to that than I can.
Right. So basically, this is something that Zoomin gives you. It's part of the admin panel. It's extremely easy to extract. And once you extract it, then it's this single script that you ask the developers to put into all of the app's pages. Okay, so it's a one-time setup, and that's it. Or as they would say in England, Bob's your uncle, right? You're done. you would have a single script. The developers aren't bothered anymore. And now what we can do is that we can create a very simple mapping where the people who author the content can determine the page that comes up whenever you are in a particular page in the application. So here, for example, we have getting started with web policy, and right here in the help comes getting started with web policy. That's the same script as if you would be in a different page, but in a different page, you might get a different help topic show up because of this very simple mapping that you can set up. right?
Yeah. Another big win with this product is the ability to just publish once and have that help kind of bring that content in. So we publish to the docs.macafee.com, and that content is available in the help widget. We're not publishing twice. There's no duplication there. You just publish once, and it's there. And I'll show that in the demo a little bit too, to show you how it's in both places.
Yeah, that's really incredible. So being able to, from the authoring point of view, you have your content, and to be able to kind of single source, it's basically, you're not really single sourcing because you're not publishing to, you're not using one source and publishing to two different targets. You're actually publishing once to Zoomin, and it gets surfaced in the doc portal, and that same content can now be highly context sensitive, highly relevant content inside your web application without changing context, without moving, and really getting the maximum value from that web application, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's really great. So let's look at the design side of the implementation here. So this is so simple, you guys. You see here on the left is the kind of the out-of-the-box style sheet for the help. And we've rebranded it in the middle, and it's just a new CSS file. So it was very straightforward. It's very simple to get to this point, to rebrand it.
Right. Right, that's part of the configuration, as we'll show a little bit later on, that McAfee and everybody else can do as part of the admin panel when you set up an in-product help widget. Then what you do as part of that is that you can decide whether to upload a CSS file, but essentially it's the same functionality and the look and feel is under your control. So that, so how difficult would you say that transition was, going from the left-hand side to the middle one? What was that like?
It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple to change the styles. I think, when you start talking about changing functionality, that's when, you need to get Zoomin involved, right? But just to change the style sheet is just uploading a new CSS. So it's very simple.
Cool. That's really great.
And then, speaking of functionality, right? Of course, McAfee, we've got to do everything completely differently and make everything complex. So, our UX team actually created this design that you see on the right, and they've got some, special kind of ways that they want the search to behave, and special ways that they want the navigation to behave, and, the link for opening the website, they want that in a special place, right? They're very particular. So, that's kind of our next step. And we've been working with Zoomin, of course, to build this functionality in. And the other thing that I think is really great about this implementation is, let's say, we need to release tomorrow. We could go to release with our new UX design, and we could continue doing our development, adding this new functionality into the help widget, and we don't have to do a new deployment. We just update that code, and it's there in the product without, there's no extra thing to do. You just update the code.
Right. So that's really important, actually, which is that, again, you have your developers who are high and mighty and sitting on their thrones, and you don't want to disturb them too much, right? So you put this script in once, okay? You put the script in once, but then you can go to the Zoomin admin panel. You can change as much as you like. You can change the area of content that you want to expose in this widget. You can change its look and feel. You can change all of those things. That script doesn't move, doesn't change one character. It stays exactly the same. So we don't need to disturb the developers. And all of this happens under your control. So you can change the functionality and the way that it looks really easily.
And again, I can't underline that enough, is being able from our side to make the changes, and without having to ask a developer to do it is huge. And it's going to, that alone will allow us really to roll this out much more broadly and much more quickly than we would have been able to otherwise.
Right, right.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You want me to wait?
We were gonna leave the question and answer session to the end because we've got a
Okay.
really cool demo that we'd like to show, and then
Okay.
we'll open the floor to questions if that's okay.
Sure. Thanks.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so let's do that. Okay, can you see the application now?
Yeah.
Okay,
you can see.
Great. So here you see the help icon in the nav bar. So we can open that up. And you see it's context sensitive, right? It's getting started with web policy. That's the name of the page. I can move it around. If it's, you know, kind of covering up something that I want to see, I can move it around. I can then, you know, close it, and I can reopen it, and it nicely remembers its location, which is very nice. That's so annoying when things move around on you, right? And, you know, I have these right now are see also links.
These see also links were done in rel tables, right?
Correct.
For those geeky amongst us,
yes. You know, this, you know, in the next phase of this, we'd really like to have these links being driven by metadata. And I was ready, I was ready to take that leap, but, you know, others on the team were a little more conservative and wanted to really build out the taxonomy that we needed to do this with first. So that's probably a wise choice. So this first phase is for see also links that are actually, you know, you actually physically add them into the rel tables. Next phase, we'll have something hopefully a little more dynamic that can be driven just by metadata.
Yeah.
So we can click there, go to, you know, a related topic. I can search, obviously, right? And get my search results here.
Which are nicely styled, by the way.
Yeah, yes.
With the CSS, very cool.
Yes, that was a new change. And then let's go back to the, and I'm going to go to the home, our, excuse me, our doc site, and I'm going to do that same search. Right, I get the same search results. I get the same topic. Same.
That's super cool. So it's like having an entire docs portal right there within your browser, nestled in there, and allowing people to get that same content right there within your application, and allowing people to get the complete value of the product without even leaving the web page.
Yep, absolutely. It's really nice. I wanted to show you one other thing here. Oh, I know what it is. So I can, you know, obviously I can go back to my home page, right? And I can link into different links here. These are inline links. These are context sensitive as well. And so I can open them into the window too. We can either take questions, or we could go into the admin console and kind of show the more.
I think it's probably really useful, yeah, to go into the admin, because I'm sure lots of people are really interested what the Zoomin admin might look like and how easy it is to set this up.
Okay.
So you wanna show what that's like?
Yeah. So here's the admin console in the Zoomin docs, and we're going to go into the web widgets. And I'm going to edit the widget. So these are the settings that define this widget. And we have some, you know, descriptive information.
Yeah, there's the cores thing over here. That's for security, to make sure that nobody except the application that you want to have content injected into it. That's the one that's going to be allowed in. So you need to allow it from your application point of view, and you need to allow it also from the Zoomin side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead. You go, Lawrence.
Okay, sure. So you can do the visibility over here. For example, you can see if it's visible on start. You can show the info button if you need. You can decide if it's going to be hidden and then only available when it's clicked, and so on. You can choose the default search text, the placeholder text that appears in the search bar. Okay, you can choose the number of results that you get per page. Here's the CSS, where you can download your current CSS or choose a file to upload a new one, so it's really easy to do. You can choose the initial widget position, if it's the bottom right as it is now, or any of the other that you need. And then finally, you choose the permissions, both in terms of functionality and in terms of content. So you choose how much of your library is going to be available to this particular widget. Okay, so if you click cancel out of here for a second, then once you've done all of this and you click save, you can get the embed code. And it's really as easy as that. You take the embed code, you copy it, you send it to your dear developers, who will then take this, inject it into the header of each of their pages, and that's it. That's what you need to do. Okay. So that's the demo that we had, and we've got about 15 minutes left. If anybody wanted to ask any questions. First of all, thank you very much, Dee. That was really excellent.
My pleasure.
Does anybody have any questions? I see that a number of people, sure, go ahead.
Dee, you said, well, you earlier on, you said you removed the context sensitive links from your content. Is that right?
They were redirected.
Oh, and so, but I noticed that the demo page you clicked help and it came up with something for that page.
Right. For the current help experience, what we have today, when you click a help button, every one of those, regardless of which page you are in the product, takes you to the home page. In the new help system, the new in-app help system, will have a context-sensitive link that will bring you to information about the page you're on.
And
so
that's what you just showed us.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you set that up? Is it automatic? Is it taken care of by Zoomin, or is it you have to share a list of IDs with the developers, or?
Sorry, what's the question about?
How is the context sensitivity put together? Do you have to do anything to get it?
Right. So the context sensitivity from the widget's point of view, basically what you want to do, ideally, is to open the widget on any single page and for it to open at the correct topic. So to do that, there needs to be a mapping between the page and the topic, right?
Right.
Now, what traditionally used to happen is that you would tell the developers about something that they would need to send to you, right? They would need to send to the help. And of course, everybody hated doing that. But the nice thing about the in-app help widget is that we handle this mapping as a configuration file, for example, a very simple mapping where you can have a bunch of URLs and a bunch of, and their associated help topics. So what it does is that it takes all of the pain of integrating with an application where you used to have to work with developers, and now you bring it back home so that it's on the writing team to say, okay, for this web app URL, we want this topic. For that web app URL, we want that topic, and so on. And these would be starter pages. Of course, you can click further and go on and search and do whatever you like. But if you open the help initially on a certain page, you can choose that opening page as it comes up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I see a question here from Beth. So I'm going to read it out, okay? Lawrence, you said you found not a lot of people use search filters. Was that just on McAfee's site or on Google, or a variety of your customers? Is this something that Google Analytics can show us? So the answer to that question is that we were surprised too, because Zoomin for quite some time were talking about filters, and we still use filters, and all of our customers use filters and so on. But we are finding increasingly, and yes, this is something that our analytics shows, and it shows very, very clearly and starkly. Okay, and of course, different customers, they have different target audiences, and some may be a little more fluent in search language and some may not. But overwhelmingly, the majority of our users, of our customers' users, and that crosses many different segments, simply don't use filters. They expect the search to work. Now, the good news is that Zoomin has, well, it always was ahead of the curve. When I was a customer of Zoomin, that's why I chose Zoomin at the time. Some years ago in a former life, I used to be a customer of Zoomin several times. And that was one of the reasons that I chose Zoomin, not because of this in particular, but just because of the feeling that Zoomin is always 2 steps ahead. 12 steps ahead. They're always thinking about what's next, and they're always there already. And so we've been having and developing and been rolling out these searches that are personalized. They use the same tags, the same filtering mechanism, but instead of filters, they are now preferences. And they are auto preferences or manual preferences, but it doesn't really matter. The idea is that once Zoomin knows what kind of content interests you, we can automatically generate personalized search results, percolating up the things that are most relevant and to each person by the type of content that they want, or the product or whatever it is that they're interested in. So yes, this is a wider trend that we have seen across the board, and it's something that that of course was also reflected in Dee's experience as well.
Mm-hmm. And the Google Analytics reports will show this to you as well. You can see that in Google Analytics. And I'd say our number is very close to the number that Lawrence showed. Just, close under 1%, close to 2% maybe, that people use search filters.
Yeah, it's astonishing. It's astonishing, but it's also incredible. Sorry, somebody else was about to speak? Okay, I've got a question here from Larry. What about cross-site scripting security? Is there cores, etc., that need to be performed? So you've seen that in the demo that we showed, that there is cores protection, and of course Hanan was on it answering. So great, thank you, Hanan. If I have more questions,
I have another question.
Yes.
You said that you found that most people found their answer going through Google. I have clients that have all their docs locked away and they aren't indexed by Google. I assume they'd just be using the Zoomin search for that, right? Or some other search.
We have clients who are who have all of their content locked away. It's a gated site.
Right.
We have some clients that are extremely security aware, and that everything. Okay, so we have some clients that lock everything away. We have some clients that have a hybrid approach, that some content is locked and some isn't, and we have some that have all of their content public with a subtle encouragement for people to identify themselves. So that's perfectly reasonable. If you don't have Google, then you use the Zoomin search. The Zoomin search is a world-class search engine. It's based on Elasticsearch as its core engine, and that allows us, of course, to stay up to date with the trends of the industry as the industry moves forward. It's an incredible engine to base everything on. And that, of course, is the basis upon which people can have personalized searches, and of course these searches that have these that appear also inside these widgets. But I think what's important to understand is that finding content is not just about great search, although search is very important and we are very proud of our search. Finding content is all about choosing what to show, first of all, so you don't have to wade through a lot of nonsense or a lot of stuff that's not relevant. And then once you've been shown something, you need to have the ability to fine-tune what you've been shown. And that can often come from things like related links, as Dee was showing before. Related links can help you, if they really are related, then if you found something which might answer your question, you can continue to navigate onwards to find the exact answer that you need. So we believe that things like related links and other bells and whistles that we have are part of findability. That findability is much more than just a good search, right?
Cool, thank you.
Welcome. We have another question here. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. This is Karen. I had a question for Dee about, did you find that you had a topic to go to already written, for example, like for every screen in the product, or did you find yourself like having to figure out what task topic to display, for example, from a certain page or that kind of thing?
Actually, the content is, we already have that content written where it's topics that summarize the page, like what you can do from the page. So that
I
content.
see. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If I can just add to that a little bit, I think it's actually a really cool point that you raise, Karen, because the way that you organize your content into topics is an essential part of content strategy. And some people do it per page, and some people do it per task. And of course, a task doesn't have to necessarily be the same as a page, right? Exactly. And then of course you have it right. And then you have a problem. What do I do now, right? And so what some people do is that in this context sensitive help widget, they would have a list of all the tasks that this page might be a part of. Right? Mm-hmm. So they would have a topic associated with the page, but it's more like a landing topic, let's call it, for this page that would then branch out to the various tasks that you might be interested in performing.
I see. Yep. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. I have a
there was a question
from...
submitted in the chat by Alice.
Yeah, go ahead.
Saying if that script you showed is for developers to add to their pages, what change is done on the content side to make it link to the web app, and is there a metadata you can set up for each data file?
You want to take this one, or should I, Dee?
You should do that. I can open the script.
Okay, so the script is for developers, it's true, to add to their pages. What change is done on the content side to make it link to the web page? So on the content side, you can reference in here a configuration file, okay? And that configuration file has a mapping between a web application address and your topic that you want to show. So that's why it doesn't impact your developers. They stay with their static script. And if you want to change a topic name from, you know, getting started.html to getting started to.html or whatever you want, then that's on you, and you don't have to go to the developers with every little change and in trepidation that it might that they won't have time or whatever. So this is I know it sounds trivial, but it's huge, because the ownership of authoring content and making it appear correctly, one of the biggest traditional problems has always been this link. And it's not a technical link, it's a human link between the authors and the developers. The developers have got bigger fish to fry, or so they feel. And for the authors to have autonomy, to be able to go in and to make changes that affect the behavior of the application without touching a developer is huge. It's a really big deal. So that's the way, that's the configuration that this happens. Is there metadata you set up for each DITA file? So that hints to a separate question, which is that sometimes you can have context-sensitive help links that work with metadata rather than with a particular file name. And you can do that too in Zoomin. I'll be happy to take that offline and to show you the wild wonders of CSH using metadata. It's extremely cool. But the simplest way is just a pure mapping file. So that's what this is about. Okay, I think we're coming up to the top of the hour. Is anybody else wanting to ask a question before we say goodbye?
Could you maybe speak to the extent to which you can customize something like this?
Yeah, sure. Well, Dee spoke about this already a little bit when we spoke about the CSS file. So when it comes to customizing the look and feel, Dee, do you want to talk us through what that was like from an implementation point of view? How did that work out?
You know, from the style sheet perspective, obviously it's just adding a style sheet. So that's just as simple as can be. Doing some of the customizations, kind of the functionality and behavior customizations, again, like Zoomin can do anything.
Nearly anything, right?
You know, I've been working with Zoomin since for 10 years or so. And so, you know, just like the portal is really customizable, the help window, I found the help window to be just as much so customizable. So, you know, we've removed toolbar buttons, and we've moved, you know, controls around, and created a different, you know, behaviors. So it's, I would say that's very customizable. From the style sheet perspective, it's you know, piece of cake, no problem. You know, behaviors, of course, you have to do an engagement or ask for changes. But again, it's not, I don't think there's no barriers to getting that kind of work done. Right.
And I think, again, not to put too fine a point on it, that's something that the authors can do if they want, together with the stylists, if that's what they need. The graphic artists, they just need to make those changes themselves. They can, of course, get developers' help if they want, because it is CSS after all. But this is very much in the domain of the authors. So this allows autonomy, this allows control, and it allows you to get on with your work. which I think is really quite important. Great.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Dee, for this excellent presentation.
Thank you.
It's really a pleasure to work with you. And if anybody wants to contact either of us later on, we have this Slack channel. And of course, these are our email addresses. So we're delighted to receive your questions or comments later on. So thank you very much indeed for attending.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.